Mabel the Lovelorn Dwarf, Chapter 5. Keep yourself loose. Feel the air around you, the ground beneath you, Mikey instructed as we walked. We, meaning my entire family, including my brothers who worked the night shift, were on our way to a practice competition Mikey had set up. Winning was for reputation only. It wouldn't count towards the standings of the Gilliam Games or even my chances there, but it was still my first real competition. He said it was impossible to recreate the exact conditions I'd be facing at the Gilliam Games, but the more actual competition experience I had throwing at both posts and moving objects, the better prepared I'd be. Throwing axes at moving objects changed everything, and I loved it. Once I'd mastered the technique for throwing, the post became nothing. I didn't even know why it was used as the first round of any real competition. In tavern competitions, sure, anyone with a little too much ale in them could mess up a throw. Moving objects, though, required a clear head, sharp reflexes, great instincts, and perfect technique. And it wasn't just moving objects, targets also popped up at random. The challenge was thrilling, so much better than scratching at a stupid rock wall in the hopes of finding some gems, so-called gifts from the gods, which would be there if there were gods or not. Mikey, can I talk to you for a minute? Dad asked. Of course. Mikey and Dad walked away a few steps behind me. I spent the day working on our accounts, Dad said in hushed tones, so I wouldn't hear, but the wind carried his words toward me. I practiced the fluid motions necessary for throwing in different directions and pretended not to listen. I thought you might be interested to know that we have, as of today, with the addition of Mabel's income, finally achieved the savings we'd had when it was all taken from us and she left. Great news, Dad. The she Dad mentioned had to be Ma'am. I knew we'd been poor when I was little. I had no idea Ma'am was the reason my family had to build our wealth from nothing. That was why Dad hated her. Why he talked about her like she was dead. Why he wanted me to believe she was dead. If others in Gilliam knew about Ma'am, and they probably did, it made sense that Dad was eager for me to find a mate. How much more could be stacked against me? I was already too thin and my beard too scraggly to be attractive. It was bad enough when I thought Ma'am was dead and had to live down weak female biology. No one wanted a mate who would die during childbirth. Yes, my brothers had done a lot to build our family reputation from having nothing back to the respectable status we had now, but knowing that we had the status taken away from us because of something Ma'am did, everything she did or didn't do reflected directly on me, affecting my ability to attract a mate, and subsequently how I carried my family in the decades to come. Being an excellent miner was not going to be enough to negate everything I had against me. I had to build a stellar reputation for my family. I would start by qualifying for regionals at the very least. Then everyone would know that I upheld dwarven tradition and values, that I was not my Ma'am. I'd qualify for regionals in Mitcham for the dwarf games and prove to everyone, including her, that I didn't need a Ma'am. We walked to the Gilliam Mountain, not to the mine entrance, but to the city entrance. Other than visiting friends, we really had no reason to be in the city side of the mountain. Mikey hadn't told me anything about where the competition would be because he said I should focus only on my form and throwing technique. My heart beat fast and my thoughts raced faster. There were 2 small taverns, but Mikey would never hold a competition there. That left the Gilliam Arena, where our battle axe team, the Dragon Killers, competed, and where the Gilliam Games would be held. The arena? I asked, as we walked into the city. The streets were a mass of layered labyrinths cut into the mountain, the homes carved into the walls distinguished only by the doorways and small windows. Torches and iron sconces lit our way through the winding roads to the far side of the mountain. Mikey sighed. Yes, the arena. I grinned, suppressing the adrenaline and excitement pumping through me. Don't get nervous. I just want you to get some experience in the competition site itself. I dreamed of competing in the arena as one of the Dragon Killers, since I could pick up my first toy axe. In my practices, I had often imagined competing in the arena with Aramis watching, cheering me on, or being in a battle with epic fight for Gilliam happening in the arena, and I save Aramis and my city. Mikey walked us around the side of the arena to the competitor's entrance. He held the door for me and the rest of the family. He told me to wait for him at the door while he led Dad and our brothers through to the spectator seats. The corridor broke off into two directions, the arena itself to the right and the warm-up dressing rooms to the left. I strolled to the left a little ways, not too far though, so Mikey could still see me. I walked to the same corridor as my heroes walked every time they went to battle. I ogled the more than 50 championship plaques lining the walls. I wanted to be a hero for my family, for my city, just like the Dragon Killers. I wandered into the dressing room, the same one my heroes used, sat on the bench where they sat, imagining myself in there with all the other competitors, with Aramis, the whole of Gilliam celebrating my win on the throwing range. Mikey found me staring at nothing. He sat beside me. I was going to give you a little pep talk, tell you to imagine yourself here during the games, but I see by your grin I don't have to. You are a golden axe. You have our competitive spirit. You'll be fine. Let's go. We walked out of the dressing room toward the arena floor. During the Gilliam Games, this arena will be packed with competitors and coaches, and the crowd noise will be deafening. But try and imagine it. No problem. I'd been to enough Dragon Killers matches and Gilliam Games to know the noise level, though I supposed it would be different hearing it from the floor of the arena and not from the stands, being a part of making it. Mikey chuckled. Didn't think it would be. He said it in such a way that I got the distinct impression he was proud of me, like he didn't hold Mam's flaws against me. I liked that a lot. We entered the arena floor, and my breath stopped for a few moments. A throwing range had been set up in the center, the red dirt combed into perfect lengthwise lines. Spectator seats surrounded the arena, rising from floor to the naturally domed ceiling. Although only a small section of the spectator seats were filled, I imagined the crowds there would be. The cheers all for me, Gilliam Games champion. A dozen competitors and coaches milled around the throwing post set up at one end of the arena, and participant benches along the edge of the range. I saw Da sitting near the wall surrounding the arena, in the section behind the participant benches. For Da, for the family, for me. I needed to do well for all of us, and for our reputation. Would it matter how great a reputation we had if I never found a life mate? Today was a chance for me to prove to Da and Mikey that Mikey was right, that throwing would boost my selection of mates. Emma was a natural with a great family reputation, and even she had to work at it, flirting with all the males. I wasn't sure I'd be able to flirt and be at the top of my competitive game at the same time. It wasn't like I was opposed to courting with someone. In fact, it sounded pretty good from the way Emma talked about it. And if I were completely honest with myself, I wouldn't mind having someone interested in me or being interested in someone. If I had a choice, though, I would have preferred to focus only on the competition and forget about courtship or finding a mate altogether, at least for today. I looked out Da's way again. I didn't have a choice. I had to do both. A couple of the competitors wore 2 braids in their beard. I didn't know them, but I knew of them, and both were from decent mining families. I think they even had brothers who were warriors patrolling the dwarven territories, keeping the peace between us and the elves, goblins and trolls, a career as honorable as mining. Mikey called for everyone's attention. Welcome to the Gilliam Games Exhibition Axe Throwing Competition. While this is an exhibition event, your coaches and I decided there should be some reward for winning. To that end, we have combined our resources to come up with some prizes. 3rd place gets a handful of rubies. Smart, as all of us were likely still emerald miners. 2nd place, a handful of sapphires. For 1st place, a handful of diamonds. All of us gasped. A diamond was an incredible prize. A handful, that was worth fighting for. After Mikey explained the rules as it would be done in the real Gilliam Games, the order of competitors was drawn from a cap. I watched the first few throwers, evaluating them and my chances. From what I'd seen, I had full confidence I could win. My turn to throw, and I took my place in the throwing line, axes in hand. On instinct, I began to imagine a battle scenario with Aramis. I stopped myself. I am a dwarf. Dwarves do not think about saving elves. Even though no one else knew I imagined saving an elf, it didn't feel right. Not here, not now, in the heart of a dwarven mining city, where true dwarf strength and skill were celebrated. No Aramis, then. At the line, I stared down the throwing post, left foot slightly in front of my right, arm up and back. I heaved the axe forward. The blade hit the post too straight on and bounced off. Dear gods of iron and wood, I hadn't thrown so bad since I started training with Mikey. I didn't need to be the best, but I couldn't be the worst either. No dwarf wants to be with a loser. My second and third throws were only better because the axes stuck in the post, but they were well off the center of the target. Thankfully, everyone else seemed to be just as bad as me this first round. Good thing we set up this contest, Mikey said when I sat next to him. You're letting your nerves get the best of you. Relax. You're losing your focus on the target and your form. My nerves weren't really the problem. Focusing on the target, well, I saw it. I could aim for it. I threw where I was aiming, but it just wasn't connecting in one smooth chain like it usually did. I needed to think about Aramis. During a break before the second round, I overheard some of the other contestants talking with their coaches. I should have been focusing on what I had done wrong and how I was going to fix it. Instead, I took the opportunity to try to find out more about the males who were interested in mating. Maybe I could hear something that would help me flirt with them and get their attention after the competition. I wasn't a natural flirter like Emma was. If I was going to succeed at this, I needed to be as prepared as I was training for competition. One of the interested males, Spencer, talked about his throws. He'd done all right, but wasn't the best. He hadn't hit the center of the target, and his form could use a lot of work, but Spencer was a mountain dweller and would be promoted to the ruby mine soon. Try putting a little more force in your throw, his coach said, and don't lock your wrist. You've got to give your wrist a little flick at the end. I turned it in time to see Spencer practicing the instruction. No wonder he did so poorly. Still, when Spencer caught me looking, I smiled and tugged the braids of my beard, the same way Emma always did, drawing attention to my availability. It was much more effective when Emma did it. Her beard was so much thicker than mine. Maybe she was still gluing bits of hair onto her chin to make her beard thicker than it actually was, like she'd done when my beard had started growing before hers, and she'd wanted one too. The second round, by the end of it, the top 6 competitors would move on to the finals. I concentrated on my form and on the post at the end of the range. While my axes stuck in the post, they were too far off the target. My performance had hardly been spectacular, but I made the top 6. So had Spencer, which surprised me, considering his disastrous form. The judges pulled out the gems, setting them on a pedestal off to our right for all to see. I wanted the diamonds, but I didn't know if I should. Would Spencer like me more if he beat me? Spencer sat next to me. Mabel, right? Yeah, hey, congratulations on making the cut, I said, pulling on my tunic to make me appear more stout. You too. You're friends with Philip, right? How did he know about my friends? Philip? That's him sitting with your brothers, isn't it? I turned around, and sure enough, there was Philip sitting with my family. He smiled and waved. Yes. Awesome. Could you introduce me to him after? Right. Dad was going to be disappointed. I was disappointed. At least he hadn't asked about Emma. Sure, no problem. I knew Philip was interested in finding a mate, but I had no idea if he preferred males over females. I guessed I'd find out. Okay, Mabel, Mikey said. 3rd round. You need to relax. It's just like throwing at home. Do what you do at home. You can do this, Mabel. I believe in you. Doing what I do at home meant being too thin, scraggly bearded, with too high a voice, dreaming of an elf, and throwing axes perfectly in a highly respected dwarven sport. Why not? There was nothing more dwarven than winning. I stepped up to the line, feeling the air around me and the ground beneath my feet. I closed my eyes and pictured myself on an adventure with Aramis. The arena was a cave we wandered into, now swarming with goblins attacking us. 3 goblins grabbed Aramis. I threw my first axe, piercing the goblin's heart. Screaming, gushing, he let go of Aramis and collapsed to the ground, dead. With my second axe, I aimed for another goblin's head. The blade lodged itself dead center, slicing him in half. The third goblin had a hand around Aramis's throat, choking him. I threw my axe, severing his arm, freeing Aramis. Mikey clapped me on the shoulder when I sat down. That's my girl. Whatever you did, don't change it ever. Your focus was incredible. Thanks, Mikey, if he only knew. Maybe none of the fellows were potential mates yet, but they knew who I was and that I was a competitor. Best of all, at the end of the competition, I walked off with second place and a handful of sapphires, and the praise of my family, especially Dad, who only spoke about the brilliance of the final round. And I hadn't given up on finding a mate just yet. More training? Mikey's a taskmaster, Philip said when I waved goodbye to him and Emma at the turnoff to my house. I didn't really want to leave my friends to throw axes. I loved the training, but I could murder a few tankards of ale after the day's hard slogging in the mines. The Gilliam Games are in 2 weeks, no time to rest. But you haven't joined us for over 2 months, Emma said. How do you expect to find a mate if you don't socialize with anyone? Doc kept saying the same thing. I liked what Mikey said, that I had time, and in the meantime, I could enjoy my standing as the only female axe thrower and maybe use it to my advantage. I shrugged. I'm not worried. I'll join you after the Gilliam Games, I promise. As much as I would rather be at the tavern, I was grateful for the practice time. Once I started throwing, I loved the serenity of it. Just me and the post and the pop-up targets Mikey had rigged up. And I couldn't deny how much my improvement over the last couple of months pleased me. If I didn't enjoy throwing, if I didn't think I had a chance at winning, I would have quit ages ago. Mikey met me in the back garden. I brought you a little something. He brought out his old leather axe-carrying satchel from behind his back. He pulled a trio of throwing axes, diamonds and sapphires embedded into the handle, and passed them to me. With your own set of axes, you won't have to think about constantly adjusting for the weight. Such a magnificent gift knocked me speechless. He had a lot of faith in me to give me something so special. Dear gods of iron and stone, thank you, Mikey. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. I tested each one's weight. They were perfect for me, not too heavy and in total balance. These are amazing. I'm glad you like them. Mikey, it's too much. You have a lot of talent and a good chance to be champion. You deserve the best. Besides, I have a reputation I believe you can equal, even surpass. I could never match Mikey's reputation as a top axe thrower in Gilliam history and Dwarf Games champion. I think the best I can do is not embarrass you. If you keep up your technique and continue to work hard, you will accomplish much more than I ever did. Thanks, but no one can beat being Dwarf Games champion, especially not in my first year of competition. No, not in your first year, but you can if you win and then successfully defend your title. Mikey paused for a moment, head down. He'd quit throwing after the championship. He had never picked up another axe again until he started training me, and then it was like he never stopped. This was the first time I'd seen a hint of regret and loss in Mikey. I got the feeling that quitting throwing hadn't been his choice, and it hurt him too much to remember, and yet he'd put it all aside for me. In a flash, whatever had given him cause for grief vanished, and he was all business. I want you to throw these, get used to the weight, make them part of you, and think about the technique we've been working on. That's all for today. I had a great time practicing. The axes were so comfortable in my hands, like they were made for me. Mikey watched, only commenting every now and then to correct my form a little. With each throw, I improved. When the sun set, he lit lanterns. The bitter wind cut through the sweat on my face, though the rest of me was hot enough to warrant stripping off all my clothes. I'm tired and sore. Can I please stop for today? I asked. No, I want you to throw for another half hour. It's important to build stamina and strength. It's the ones who can throw through fatigue and pain who become champions. A dull ache in the muscle of my right shoulder made it hard to lift my arm and throw. Please, Mikey, my arm really hurts. Stretch it out then, throw for 30 more minutes. I'll have a gorgeous piece of venison waiting for you. I flexed and rubbed my shoulder and threw again. If I wanted to be champion, no one knew better what I needed to do than Mikey. It hurt to raise my arm and throw, but I clenched my teeth and kept going. I was wrecked at the end, but pleased with myself for pushing through the pain and throwing not too badly. My throws were pitiful, but at least I still hit the targets. I sank onto the table bench. A huge plate filled with juicy venison right off the spit lay in front of me. My right arm and hand cramped up. I stared at my meat and I stretched and massaged my muscles. You've done well today, but there's a lot of room for improvement, Mikey said. Unbelievable. No axe-throwing competition made the contestants throw for 2 hours straight. I always threw my best in the middle of each practice session, so with the warm-up throws, I should be fine. I couldn't do any better, not with only 2 weeks to go. How much more? Perfection and nothing less, I groaned. To win, you have to push yourself harder than you ever have. Being the best will either break you or you will be crowned champion. Do you want to be champion? You do want to be champion, don't you? Of course I did. I also wanted to go to the prospector with my friends and sleep. For the family, for me, I had to think beyond my aches and pains, to the fact that every male in Gilliam, whether he was interested in mating or not, would be watching and admiring me, and thinking I would be a suitable mate for himself or a friend. As a champion, I could have my pick of mates. You know I do. Then don't be afraid to work hard and keep improving. The Gilliam Games are just the start. The greater your skill, the greater the competition. That night, I curled up in bed with my movie magazine. I hadn't looked at it in a while. I loved dreaming of Aramis. I loved axe throwing and competing. I did want to be champion, but right now, all I wanted to do was go to the movies with a friend, sit in the dark, and watch the wizard's crystal flash the images on the screen. All I wanted was to do something else, be someone else. If you're enjoying the adventures of Mabel Goldenaxe, don't forget to subscribe below.